in that shot they give me on Tuesdays.
Yep, stay well inside and to the right. Feel free to head all the way up.
Well, good morning, everybody. Nice to have you with us here on such a beautiful day. Welcome aboard Discovery 3. My name is J.R. Lewis, and I have the honor of being your narrator on behalf of the 5 generations of the Charles M. Binkley family, which has been building and operating boats for 128 years. They're in pretty good hands. Started with Charlie Binkley in 1898, continues with one of his great-granddaughters in the wheelhouse, who I'll introduce you to shortly by way of our video screens. But a quick favor we'll ask as the program begins, if we could kind of start to think of the boat a little bit more like you would a movie theater in terms of the level of conversations with one another, so folks around you are able to hear. If we could make sure that cell phones don't make any noise, like ringing, or if you're going to play back a video clip, just make sure it's on mute if you would. And then standing in the seating areas is not a good idea either, for the same reason you wouldn't stand up to watch a movie. So thank you for taking care of each other. And now let's meet the captain, Maddie Binkley.
Thanks, JR. Good morning, everyone, and welcome on board Discovery 3. As JR said, my name is Maddie Binkley, and I'll be one of your captains this morning. I'm also joined by our captain in training, Jonathan Bradish. And right now we're coming to you live from the wheelhouse up here on our 4th deck. And if you aren't up here and able to see us, just go ahead and glance around at any one of the TV monitors located around the boats, and you'll be able to see us. Now this is a great example of how we're going to be utilizing the TV monitors throughout the tour today, because everything that we see and do is going to be filmed live as it's happening. So if you can't make it to the edge of the boat right away, or maybe you just don't have a good view from where you're sitting, of course, you're free to move about the boat as much as you'd like, but you could just glance up to see what's going on. We're also going to use them to show you some historic footage of the old days as well. Now, before we depart, the Coast Guard requires us to talk just briefly about safety. Our life jackets are stored in 3 locations on the boat. In the back of the first deck, in 2 closets in the galley. Overhead is the ceiling of the 2nd deck, and in the back of the 3rd deck, down low behind some white curtains. Joining us in the wheelhouse today is my nephew Clyde. He's going to be bringing all those live shots. He's also going to demonstrate how to use one of these. You just slip it right over your head, bring the band behind your back, and put it in front, and you're all set. Thanks, Clyde. Looking down at our cameras, I can see the deck hands have just pushed the gangplanks on board, which means we must have everyone. So we'll start to drop the lines here and get underway. I'll be back on the microphone a little bit further down the stream to talk about the design and construction of this boat. But until then, just sit back, relax, enjoy the show. I'll pass it back to you, JR, and once again, everyone, welcome on board.
All right, thank you, Captain. Now, one of her first responsibilities today is going to be to blow on our big whistle and let everybody know we're coming. I want to warn you, if you're outdoors, this whistle is not subtle, so I'll give you a heads up before it goes off. In the meantime, let me call your attention to that big blue and white sign over to the right that says Binkley and Barrington Navigation. That's our tribute to Charlie Binkley, Maddie's great-grandfather, who came over the Chilkoot Trail in 1898 to participate in the Klondike Gold Rush. Not as a miner or a prospector, by the way, but a boat builder and operator who would get people from the end of the trail out to where the gold actually was. Real dangerous stretch of river in between those 2 points that claimed a lot of lives for people who didn't know what they were doing. But Charlie Bigley and Sid Barrington turned that around, and the Bigleys have been on the rivers of Alaska ever since. You can learn more about your host family in that newspaper-style gazette that's available throughout the boat. There's also a map of Discovery 3 in there that will show you where all our different facilities are. Laboratories and trading posts, 2 galleys, and so forth. Smoking and vaping permitted at the back of decks 3 and 4 only. Now that whistle's going to go off any second, so you folks on the top deck especially, be ready. You're going to notice this. And for heaven's sakes, please do not miss this very emotional farewell off to the starboard side. Because our crew practices that for you all winter. Whistle and wave. Such synchronicity and beauty. Now, Charlie Binkley had a son named Jim. And it was Captain Jim Binkley who actually started this excursion with his wife Mary back in 1950. And Jim really liked to build stuff like this ride-out we all walked across, which is made of leftover Trans-Alaska pipeline. That's what those big gray tubes are running through the middle. And we can fill this with 100,000 gallons of river, which sinks it, and then put any of our boats on top, pump the water out, and it all comes up like a big freight elevator. That's for Coast Guard inspection every 5 years. Discovery 2 over here was also recycled by Jim. She was the last Sternwheeler to ever run freight on the Yukon and Tanana rivers to the late 1960s when she got scrapped. But Jim saved that boat from being destroyed, converted her to passenger service. She'd been Discovery 2 since 1971. And you'll notice there's a big orange paddle wheel on the back of Discovery 2, like we have here on big number 3. And I want to assure you that paddle wheel is not there for decoration. You're on the real thing here today. All of our movement forward and back is created by the big orange wheel turning in the river. There's 5 big rudders back there for steering, bow and stern thrusters that help us just turn around a little more quickly so we don't waste your time. And even though we weigh 280 tons, we only need about 39 inches of water. That's why our life jacket drill doesn't take very long. I don't even know why we have to have them on the top 2 decks. Oh no, we're sinking! It's over. Just put your life vest on and walk to shore. You're not even going to get it wet. In fact, if you're over 39 inches tall, we might ask you to get out and push. Is he over 39 inches tall? No, okay, he's excused then. We're going to be fine, because we got a Binkley in the wheelhouse. Now, as we get in the channel here and head downstream, I want to take just a sec to make sure we're all oriented, because I'm assuming you figured out Alaska is not that little island that you see southwest of California on the map all the time, with a box around it, sitting right next to Hawaii. We're up a little higher than that. You're only about 1,700 miles from the North Pole right now, about 170 miles or 140 miles south of the Arctic Circle, in an area of the state known as the interior region, because we're a long way from any of Alaska's 34,000 miles of ocean shoreline. And in fact, the nickname for Fairbanks is the Golden Heart City. Gold, because that's why we even have a city, and then heart, because we're right in the heart of the state, right in the middle. And it's a special community in my heart, because I was born and raised here. I've been in Alaska my whole life. And I have trick-or-treated at 27 below. Now, I don't know if you have any idea how long it takes to thaw out a Tootsie Roll. It's been in that for 45 minutes. We just learned to be patient. And you can't do a trip like this with just a captain and some guy running his mouth on your television. You gotta have a skilled crew to get this job done. And I want to introduce you to some key members of your crew. Starting with a very, oh, there you are. I was wondering if you were going to show up. Starting with your first mate, James, who is on your monitor here and on our 3rd deck. He's another born and raised Fairbanks, and in fact stayed Alaska, Fairbanks, with a major in psychology, hoping to become a clinical counselor, and he's also Army ROTC, so we're very proud of that. James, good to have you on board. And if there's anything you need while we're underway, too hot, too cold, too loud, too quiet, whatever, let James or any of his deckhands know, because that's why they're here, is to take care of you. And if they can't solve the problem immediately, I want to assure you, every single one of them has been extensively trained to empathize with you with great enthusiasm. Then in addition to the deckhands, some very special young Alaskans you'll meet today are your native guides, who will share their culture with you at Cheetah Village. Up on our top deck, we're going to say hello to Kate, who is Koyukon Athabaskan. From Canada, goes to Hutchison Tech, likes basketball, hunting, and fishing, and it's his second year on board. We're glad to have Kate as part of the crew. Love thyself. Now, I know you're going to be curious about houses and how they're built, what the land values are like, and all that kind of thing, but I don't want to miss this very special piece of Binkley family history to the right. That's discovery number 1. The original that Jim built back in 1955 in his backyard from scratch. And if you're curious what this trip looked like in its early days, we can use our TV monitors to show you. We'll roll time back. There's our founding couple, Maddie's grandparents, Jim and Mary, when this whole thing was brand new. And they used to do most of the work by themselves. Jim at the helm and Mary doing the narration after they made everybody's coffee and donuts. But even though today's boat can hold 900 people, the content of the trip has stayed very true to the original idea. Sharing our native cultures and dog mushing in a way I think you're going to remember. Plus, of course, we have to talk about gold, because that's how Fairbanks got started. Over here to the right, you see the Cheetah Pump House coming up. And that was a very important part of a mine that was actually in the next valley behind these green hills you see over to the right. That's where the Esther Cripple Creek hydraulic placer mine was. And this pump house could send them 6,000 gallons of water a minute to feed Dredge 10. Now this doesn't pump water anymore. It pumps very much beer. But it's on the National Register of Historic Places for its role in that mining era. And then all that water that they took out of the Cheetah would flow right back down into it through a little Cripple Creek, Alaska ahead of us and to the right. I know that creek doesn't look like much. You can see it on the TV there too. But we don't point it out for its scenic value. That creek is only 10 miles long and it produced $100 million worth of gold. When gold was $18 to $24 an ounce, today that'd be worth $21.9 billion if you want to grab a pan and give it a try. Although I don't think the old sourdoughs left too much behind, but there were claims on it until not too long ago. And we'll use our screens again to show you how hydraulic placer mining worked and why that water was important. There goes the pipe over the hill. That pipe got narrower on the other side, so the velocity and pressure increased, and then they could shoot it out of these big nozzles to prep the ground. That one guy in the checkered shirt could do the work of 15 to 20 with picks and shovels. And then the dredge would lumber up there like a great big dinosaur and start sifting through all of that. They'd keep the gold and toss all the mud and the rocks out the back. It made a mess. We don't do that anymore. Scar things up. Brought a lot of gold out of the ground for a number of years, and lots of people came into the interior and helped establish Fairbanks and the surrounding communities. Plus a bunch of Sternwheelers to move everybody around. There were about 250 boats like this operating in the height of that era. But that changed a whole lot when airplanes began to arrive. Aviation is a big deal in Alaska. Well, I see some of you got distracted by that big house over to the left there. That belongs to my ex-wife, and I don't want to talk about that, so look over to the right side, because that's where the action's going to be. Our plane's going to take off, and you don't have to get glued to your seat. Remember, you move around all you like. Just be cautious of standing in the seating area again. Think movie theater. And we'll all share the view. This is a 1952 Piper Super Cub on floats. That 150 horse engine is already lit up and headed our way. Now, while the flight is underway, we want to emphasize that bush flying is not just part of our past. It's very critical in the present, too, because little villages get surrounded by snow and ice in the winter, and the only way in or out is a little plane like this on skis. 82% of our communities are disconnected from the road system. That's how spread out we are. And these pilots take good care of the people they serve. It's not just a job. In fact, one of my favorite stories out of the 1950s like that, there was a guy that would fly around that took him over a hilltop that had a family living on it with two little girls who loved ice cream. And he knew it would take them hours to pack everything up and get all the way down into the valley. So every time he would fly that route, he'd take ice cream in the plane, and when he got over their homestead, he'd drop it out the window with a big red ribbon attached to it. So the girls could watch it stream down, they know right where to go find it. Now that other pilot that was responsible for bringing the dentist to the village didn't see as much glee out of the children. We all have our jobs to do. Now our plane is slipping back around into position out in front of us. Slip turns, by the way, are kind of part turn, part dive, and the pilots need to know how to do that, because if they're going to land on a tiny lake surrounded by tall trees, you can't always make a nice gradual descent. Sometimes you got to just corkscrew it right in. But now the pilot is aligned with the river and making their way down on this beautiful day. Can't see the water now as the plane flares, so this last part is done by feel. Then one hop it a little, but this isn't gymnastics. If you can walk away from it, it's a 10. So we are going to give full credit to 88 Zulu on this beautiful day. One out of every 70 Alaskans is a licensed pilot, including many members of the Binkley family. Patty and her husband own some planes, so actually I'm going to step out of the way and we'll listen in to the wheelhouse chatter with the plane and kind of see how it's going out there.
Discovery 3 calling you to Brennan. Thank you so much for coming down and giving us that demonstration. How's the air up there today?
It's a glorious day. We have rivers, no clouds, light winds. It's a great day to be out and about.
It is a gorgeous day for flying indeed. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background into aviation, where you got to where you are today.
So growing up, I was always interested in flying. Like a farmer started flying, you know, people as a career. Worked on the pipeline, I was a ship, I was going on a long shift, and I was flying. Until about that, I was flying over Alaska and over Canada.
Understood. Well, we're so thankful to have you as a pilot up here. And JR had mentioned you're flying a Piper Super Cub, which is a very popular airplane amongst the bush pilots here. Could you speak to its versatility and also share a little bit about how you're able to keep these planes flying despite them being 1930s and 40s technology?
Yeah, they're very versatile, as you can see. One straight down, in the wintertime, we'll be on wheels or skis. Get down to your favorite cabin or your fishing or hunting spot. They're just really short field landing, really versatile and just fun to fly. And they do have a very avid following, so there's a lot of aftermarket parts. So you can really just rebuild the plane from the ground up if you need to. As long as you're the maintenance, no problem keeping them flying forever.
Yes, we hope to see them for many years to come. They're such fun planes to fly. I see you taxiing in front of us. Is there time for one more takeoff here before we go?
Let me get turned around here and give you one more takeoff. It is clear.
Alright, safe travels to Brennan, and this is D3 clear.
All right, one more look over to the right. Plane only weighs about 1,100 pounds. It's got skinny metal tubes in the frame, fabric coating, about like bed sheets. 34,000 pounds of cargo. here on Earth, though, I've noticed that you're looking at our houses. So we'll talk about those. And I don't have any ex-wives, by the way. I just had to snap you out of it there so nobody missed the action. My one and only, we're going on 37 years. We're doing fine. But, thank you. Well, I'm sure you've noticed our construction pattern out here, which is that there's no construction pattern out here. A little bit of everything. Probably doesn't surprise you very much about Alaskans. Your neighbor just asked that you meet the basic codes for safety and sanitation. Beyond that, do your thing. Typical way to build is what's called slab on grade. But after you check for permafrost, because if you build on that permanently frozen ground, the house is going to go down into that soil and melt it. And then you don't know what you're sitting on. So you dig out everything you don't want, fill it with gravel, and a concrete slab over the top, all the roughing. Land on the river, I'm told, is probably averaging about 100,000 an acre, and the contractor built homes probably starting at the 300 a square foot range for basic frame construction. But most of these were actually built by the owners, and they live in them all year round, not just for the summer. One of the older ones out here is coming up on our right. It's a pioneer style white spruce log home with that kind of steep reddish brown roof. And you see the slats across the top, that's a newer upgrade. Those are snow guards. They not only hold the snow in place over the winter so you get all the insulation, but then when the snow does shed, it doesn't drop right in front of your door or someplace that you don't want it. But that home has been there for decades, and we'll see some newer ones in a little while. If you're wondering what people do for a living in Fairbanks, it's not all that different really from most other medium-sized American towns. 30,000 in the city, 100,000 in the extended borough. So that's lots of white collar and blue collar and professionals and tradespeople. It's a young population. The average age is only about 30 because we've got two big military facilities at a university. But we got our retired folks too, like the couple in this cabin over to the left. You build a big house if you want, or go small on the cabin and save some capital for toys, like private plane and private dock. Private Rubbermaid seating area, postcard, perfect little cabin, and the whole state is their backyard. It's not a who's who either. It's just folks living their lives, although this light brown home over to the right with the red umbrella, that one's kind of special, because that's where Ronald and Nancy Reagan lived in 1984. Didn't know that, did you? For 3 whole days. With Senator Frank Murkowski, because they were refueling Air Force One on their way back from China. We found out 2 days later Pope John Paul II was going to refuel here on the way out to Korea. So the Reagans laid over a little while, and we hosted the summit at the top of the world. That's what the news people called it. There were 10,000 of us out on the tarmac to watch. But I had a really good seat, because my marching band got to play when they took the stage. I had a trombone frozen in my lips for 2 hours to get that privilege. It was worth it because our pictures turned out real well. Now over to the left, here's a couple examples of modern log construction. That one with the green roof has 1.5 miles of white spruce. Great big windows so nobody gets cabin fever when it's dark 20 hours a day. And the late Jack McManus's place right next door. A little more conventional design. We know that's Jack's place because there's a sign right there that says Jack McManus. Everybody's like, is he famous? No, just a guy with a sign. Here's a retired attorney from Wisconsin. Yeah, American by birth, Alaskan by choice. Well, one of our favorite Alaskans by choice actually came here from Massachusetts in 1975, Susan Butcher. Take a look over to the right. You'll see a dog yard come up here with a white box on stilts, some houses and a sled, and that's what's left in John Verbeek's old yard. They call it the Flying Dutchman. And Susan actually bought 3 of John's dogs to start her kennel. John laughed all the way to the bank because guys in the 70s knew full well that girls weren't going to win dog races. Oh. on the Iditarod 4 times. Yeah, and the ladies couldn't print the t-shirts fast enough when that started to happen with a great big old letter that said Alaska, where men are men, and women win the Iditarod. Everybody got with the program after that. You're going to learn a lot more about her when we go right by her home soon. Trailbreaker Kennels. It's right out here on the Chena. We're going to see it before too much longer.
A breakdancer down here.
What day is it? Is it Friday? Okay, here we go. This isn't a wildlife tour unless our neighbors have. This thing's pretty log home over to the right. We like to show you this one because it was built entirely by hand as a tribute to the pioneers. Cut down every tree, dragged them all in, peeled each log with a draw knife. This is much a work of art as it is a home. But his brother lives right downstream, couldn't care less about having a log home. So even within the families, everybody does their own thing. This frame construction, nice big multi-pane windows again, and a hot tub right all in the deck. And you know they're going to use that in the winter too. That's not just for summer. If it's 40 below, send Dad out to heat that up. The rest of the family will watch through the big windows in their bathing suits. And then when they get the thumbs up, the rest of them can streak out and jump in the tub and watch the northern lights dancing right overhead. How's that for a thrill? Or if that's not good enough for some of you, there's always getting out of that water at 40 below, soaking wet, back into your house. Should be a little stiff in your feet. Yeah, you just want to marinate. Almost everybody has their own well and septic. Power phone and internet the way most other folks get it, and then heating with oil-fired furnaces that circulate hot water through the house at the base of the wall or under the floor in the newer ones. But almost everybody's got a wood stove or a fireplace, so if you have furnace trouble, you get some wood and it's fine. Back in the 1930s and 40s, though, when Jim Binkley was running freight, you didn't see houses out here. It'd be Sternwheelers. There could be a half dozen along this left bank, getting ready to take on freight at the boatyard we're about to pass, and some of those old boats are still sitting here. You look about 11 o'clock off the bow, or on your monitor, you can see what's left of the mill grid, kind of half in and half out of the water. And then sharply left is the old green Seawolf, the Sternwheeler tucked into the trees. The gray and white Pelican a little farther up the bank. Not a very busy spot today, but we have filmed when there was a lot more activity here. What would happen is railroads would bring freight into Fairbanks. Trucks would bring all that stuff down here and move it to barges, and then these vessels would push that freight all the way to the Bering Sea, right from this spot, 1,200 miles out, 1,200 miles back, 10 times a summer, if they could fit that many trips in before freeze-up, just like the Pelican is doing right there, pushing that barge out in front with a little snow on the bank. And the boats came in all shapes and sizes, too. Little ones like those we just went by, or a medium-sized vessel like us at 280 tons. In this final slide, that's the 1,000-ton Sternwheeler Yukon, 3 times our weight. And there's a very special bit of shared history between the Yukon and Discovery 3 that we're going to learn about firsthand from our wheelhouse, because it's part of Captain Maddie's family story. Maddie, we can see you there. What is it these two big boats have in common?
That's a great question, JR. And first of all, I would just like to welcome everyone back to the wheelhouse of Discovery 3. And what JR was alluding to just now is this wheel that we've been using to navigate us downriver. This is actually the original ship's wheel from the steamer Yukon, which was that last vessel we saw in the slideshow there. And that boat, along with this wheel, built in the early 1900s, got quite a few decades worth of service out on the Yukon and Tanana rivers. However, in the fall of 1947, the captain of that boat took a little bit of a risk. He wanted to try and squeeze on one extra freight run to see if he could walk away with some extra cash that year. Unfortunately, he didn't quite
business here to teach very young Binkleys how to read rivers, even young. And I'm wondering, how does a little kid see over that wheel when it's just a few feet tall?
Yeah, this wheel is incredibly tall, and we usually have several little Binkleys running around up here at this point, but we have this old wooden box sitting right here in front of it, and right now it looks like a wall outside of the studio. It's an old 50s era fuel carrying box, and my grandfather, being a child of the Depression, he never threw anything away, so this is a little item that he had saved, and it sat in all three of our Discovery Boat houses. It's what my dad and uncle stood on. I stood on it with my siblings and all of my cousins, and that was really special. I get to bring the fifth generation of my family to work with me and prop them up on the box so they can see over the tall wheel, so it's kind of a big clean family here.
Well, no need to change it when it works. You know, and you talk about multiple generations in the wheelhouse. We also have quite a few generations of technology in this boat, things that are just a year old, and then other concepts as old as the country. So how's all that work together?
Yeah, Discovery 3 is a great blend of old and new. Those old boat builders, they've really perfected the design of the Sternwheeler, so the basic design of this boat remains relatively unchanged from the boats of old. For example, we have a perfectly flat bottom on this boat, there's no keel, and that allows us to carry really heavy passenger loads down really shallow rivers because we're only drafting 3.5 feet fully loaded, which is a really impressive draft for a vessel of this size. And then, of course, some more modern technologies come into play up here in the wheelhouse and down in the engine room. We can remotely control the boat all the way to Fairbanks cabins, you can see kind of confident. You know, back in the old days, those boats used to burn cordwood to create steam power. And a vessel of this size would have burned about 1 cord or roughly 3,000 pounds of wood per hour. So you can imagine how often they stopped going on the riverbanks to wood up, as they would say. Very little is very backbreaking work. In the modern day, we're using diesel to create hydraulic power, so we're thankful for that.
Yep, it does make it easier. Thank you, Captain, for the tour up there. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Good view, 41 feet off the surface, which is where you always want your pilot, of course. But of course, that view is going to be very different in February. And if you weren't planning to stay that long, we'll just show you frozen Cheetah River on your TV at a time of year when our dog mushers get real excited. Like the great Susan Butcher hitching up the team, getting ready to go for a training run right out the backyard onto the frozen cheetah from Trailbreaker Kennels. And I guarantee you she'd still be doing that every winter if cancer had not stolen her from us in 2006. And she changed the Iditarod forever. First musher to ever win 4 with a great lead dog, Granite, who we'll learn all about today. We got a team all the way to the top of Denali. Nobody else has done that. Was invited to the White House by 3 different presidents. And along with her husband, Dave Monson, Susan passed on her love of mushing to their eldest daughter, Tekla, who still lives here at Trailbreaker and has largely taken it over now that her dad, Dave Monson, passed the torch last winter. So here is your winter view of Trailbreaker Kennels. Now take a look to the left and you'll see the summertime view. Now we're not just going to float by here either. We are going to stop and turn this boat into a big grandstand so I can introduce you to that young lady that you just saw at the end of the video. Susan Butcher's eldest daughter, Tekla Butcher Monson on shore.
Oh, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trailbreaker Kennel. It's a beautiful day here on the banks of the Cheetah River, and I feel so fortunate because I get to bring you into our family and introduce you to the dog mushing lifestyle in interior Alaska. So we are going to do a training run with some of our adult Alaskan Huskies, but before we do that, let's spend some time talking about the youngest members of the kennel. So this little puppy that I have in my hands is just 5 weeks old, one of the youngest sled dogs that we've got here, and believe it or not, all the cuddling and playtime we do is an important part of building their confidence for later on in life.
It's the Iditarod starter kit. You know, and I remember how much your mom would talk about the importance of bonding with the dogs. But how early in their life does that actually begin in a way that matters?
You know, I watched my mom work with a lot of puppies throughout my childhood, and I noticed she would go in with the mothers, pick up each little dog individually, and blow across their noses. This is because for the first 10 days of their life, their eyes aren't open yet, so they're very dependent on a sense of smell to get used to us. Once their eyes do open and they're wandering around, you can see that they already know the humans in their community. This is what my mom would call the trust and be trusted relationship. It was so important to all the training she did here. Now, once they're a little bit older, we bring them out into this little enclosure here and encourage them to overcome obstacles. Today's obstacle is jumping over these logs. Now, just a couple weeks ago, it was really challenging, so we'd have to give these pups a boost. But now that they can do it confidently on their own, we praise them on the other side. This teaches the puppies that we're never going to ask them to go any farther or faster than they're capable of, and we're always going to be there for them when things get tough.
And they get better at it. I remember when that teeny little log in the middle was a real challenge, and now you got this one going over the much larger one. Sometimes you want to do it, and sometimes you don't. But there we go. See? Oh yeah, now we're going to try the really big one. But the time will come just in a few weeks where these logs won't be a challenge or anything really in your yard, but well before they're big enough to put into harness. So how are you going to bridge that gap?
Well, we start taking them out on daily walks in the woods, and that is so much fun because this is where the intergenerational learning starts. Now, they're by themselves right now, but once we're off leash in the woods walking on our trails that we've got around here, we like to have a couple of adult dogs as babysitters and mentors. And this is key because the retirees have so much wisdom that they can pass on to the next generation, specifically about curiosity and confidence. Maybe an adult dog will lead the puppies and they will splash through a puddle. Maybe they'll run through brambles and branches and the pups do their absolute best to keep up. And it's so much fun because after months and months of playing follow the leader, we notice that these dogs are excited to run together as a pack. And it's a really smooth transition when they finally put their harness on for the first time.
Yeah, but you know, that's something that you clearly are going to want them to enjoy and succeed at, so they want to continue to do it. How do you know when that transition time arrives? Is it age or weight or personality? What are you looking for?
Well, believe it or not, this winter, we're going to put those pups into harness. It'll be about 6 months to a year old. And again, we want to make sure that the instinct to pull has kicked in. Alaskan Huskies love what they do. So we're going to foster a love of running throughout their entire lives. And again, we use the older dogs to train the puppies. Hook up a couple of confident adult lead dogs out in front of the team, and then 4 to 6 puppies behind them. We'll give the team the command to go, which is all right. The adults bound forward, they put their heads down and they start trotting. The puppies start to chase behind them, except for this time they're pulling a sled along with them. So honestly, within a couple of minutes, it looks like we have a small adult team of dogs. In fact, my mom would sometimes say that it takes a minute to teach them to go, but a year to teach them to whoa.
Boy, I remember that. And speaking of go time, looks like this bunch behind you is about ready to head out. So as they get hitched up, can you just stick any dog anywhere whenever you feel like it, or is it more like a baseball team where they actually learn positions?
Well, the first two in the team, these are called our lead dogs. Now, you may have heard that term before because lead dogs tend to be some of the most famous in a team. They're in charge of steering, so I'm calling out voice commands to my leaders. Now, today we've got a couple of our 2-year-olds running in lead, Wickham and Lizzie. So these guys don't have as much experience, but in the swing dog position right behind them, we've got 2 of our bulletproof leaders. So this is a strong second, if you will, especially when we're first teaching those leaders to take our voice commands. In the middle of the team, we've got team dogs. In a race like the Iditarod, you start off with 16 dogs in your team. So you can imagine how long these lines get and how powerful teams that go to Nome truly are. Finally, in the back closest to the side, we've got wheel dogs. And sometimes you'll see a larger dog in this position, especially on hilly terrain, because on those hills they're going to feel a little bit more of the weight being closer to the sled. But in summer months, I actually don't use a sled. Instead, I use this 4-wheeler. Now, on this guy, we've actually taken out the engine. So what you're about to see here is 100% dog power. Each of the Alaskan Huskies can pull about 4 times their body weight. So once we get the initial tug going, they're just going to be gently leaning into their harnesses and helping trundle this 4-wheeler forward. A lot of fun power in this team today, a young team today, so it should be a fun run.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just tragic they're not eager to do this, isn't it?
All right.
But look at it, as soon as she says it's time to go, everybody leans in, picks up speed, and just like that, Tekla is gone. But keep looking to the left. In between the two cabins and right out behind the dog pen, because she's doing a big U-turn, and then it's going to come from our right to our left. Use the monitors too, if that helps. We'll have a camera on her whenever we can see her. Lead dog set the pace. The rest of the team falls in behind. All the dogs back here freaking out. Pick me, I want to go. But they'll get their chance, don't worry. And you can use the TVs now to look at some tape we shot last year of what it's like to be out on that trail. Daily exercise is why these dogs are so healthy and why they live so long. Granite lived to be 17 and a half. Ran over 41,000 miles in his career. Now keep looking to the left still, in between those same two cabins, but focus on that trail in the shade, much farther away.
Here we are, coming out of the trees on the other side of the lake, and these dogs are really flying. It's so impressive. They can carry me and the four-wheeler. Together we weigh about 500 pounds. Still, we're going close to 20 miles per hour. Now, what I like to do during any training run is look at their tug line. That's the line that attaches the back of the harness to the four-wheeler. Looking up and down my team, I can see that all these dogs are working together and doing their job by the fact that all of their tug lines are nice and tight. It's a beautiful day to be out here on the trail, and the dogs are absolutely loving it. Now, coming up ahead, I'm going to give my lead dog the left-hand command. This will be a good test for these young leaders. We'll make a little curly cue turnaround, and then I'll call you from the same trail on the way home.
Okay, haw command. Remember, this is all voice steering. No reins or lines, so you shout out what you want. G for right, haw for left, hike or all right, gets them started. To stop them, you say whoa, and then you pray. Because they don't like that command a lot, and you're going to see when they get back. Now watch that same trail opposite way or on your monitor for the return trip. She'll be going the other direction.
Well, the team made that turn beautifully. Now we're on the homeward stretch. That's when they really kick it into gear to get us home. Like any endurance athlete or marathon runner, the Alaskan Huskies know that they need to save energy in reserve so that at the end of a race, they can pass competitors in front of us and keep other competitors behind us. This is a half-mile run today, but in the winter, we're going close to 50 miles a day on the frozen Chena River. They look great and are excited to get back to the yard.
Okay, now she'll disappear into the trees again for a bit. We'll roll some more tape for you on the monitor. And then the next place you'll see the team will be right behind the dog pen going left to right. So that's where you want to focus. By the way, I couldn't help but notice kind of leaning to the left all of a sudden. Which is fine, you're not going to tip us. I just want to make sure you know we're not done with dogs when we leave, because Tekla and some of the crew are going to join us at the village when we go on shore and bring dogs with them. So you get to meet the Alaskan Huskies right up close, just like that bunch. Pat them on the head, ask some ushers questions. Beautiful bronze statue of that great lead dog, Granite, given to Susan and David as a gift to commemorate his career. Now look in the front yard over to the right by the veterinary barn, because that's where the team's going to come in, and they didn't look like they were slowing down, so I hope the whoa command works. Whoa! Nicely done, Tekla! Another great run!
Oh, gosh, thank you so much! Good dogs! After every training run, it's so important that we go up and down the line, giving every dog a pat on the head and letting them know we appreciate their hard work. Definitely.
Yeah. And then when track practice is over, we all get in the pool. It's such a great location. And I was mentioning, Tekla, while you were on your way back, we get to meet you, some of your crew. You'll be bringing dogs to the village so we can see them up close and learn about them. And that beautiful statue of Granite given to your folks, which is nice for photos. But the statue is not the only way that he's been immortalized, because there's also the book about him your parents wrote. And I'm hoping that if anybody decides they might like one of those to remember this experience, will there be time to visit with you about that? Maybe even get a little note written inside?
Absolutely. You know, I grew up hearing my mom tell the story of Granite time and time again. She was so proud because even though Granite was born the runt of his litter, many people thought he wouldn't make a strong sled dog. She still decided to work with him and build his confidence. Through that dedication, Granite became one of the greatest lead dogs of all time. And that story has always stuck with me. It's told me that I can chase my dreams no matter the obstacles. So if you folks would like to get a copy of that book for children, or even a public library, I would be honored to dedicate it for you.
Okay, well, we'll certainly look forward to that. And In the meantime, as your whole team runs away, we thank you very much, Tekla, for sharing your backyard.
Well, thank you for stopping by.
Hey, they know who feeds them, so they come back. It's fun, isn't it? Yeah, you get to see those dogs do what they love. And decades ago, there was a little run, born of this count, that all Susan's friends took one look at and said, you just give that one away as a pet. It's never going to be a sled dog. Well, look on your monitor at Susan winning the 1987 Iditarod. And that little runt is not only on the team, he's leading it. The one that she named Granite, the dark-colored dog to her left with the yellow flowers. They won 2 in a row, 1986 and 87. And then he got a heart infection. And the vet said he was done, might as well put him down. But Susan said, absolutely not. She nursed him back to health, and they won again in 1988 and 1990. Every time Susan won that race, Granite was up in front there. And she used to tell us that story every day when we would come by, until the cancer brought it to a halt. But it turns out that tale of the little puppy that nobody believed in was the favorite bedtime story of both of their daughters, Tekla and the younger one, Shoshana. Just like my dad used to read The Little Engine That Could to me. And it was really important to the parents to write it down for the girls, which they did over the last year of her life. And then when their friends saw it, they coaxed them into publishing it. And that's how we ended up with this book about Granite. And if you decide you want one, Tekla will not only sign it for you, but like she said, personalize or dedicate it to anybody that you like. Kids, grandkids, school class, library, that's entirely up to you. But we just hope you at least get a chance to take a look at it, because it's a very special story to us up here. Right now, though, we are going to change subjects pretty significantly to Jim Binkley's favorite part of being on these rivers, Alaskan native culture. In two kind of broad groups, people that migrated long ago from Mongolia and Siberia, settled around the coast of the state. You've heard them referred to collectively as Eskimo, although that term has largely been set aside now in favor of the self-descriptive names like Inupiaq in the north and Yupik in the west. Then in the interior, this is Athabascan country. They came from other places in Asia thousands of years ago, and our Athabascans are actually the ancestors of the Apache and the Navajo. And you can learn a lot more about Alaskan native culture in that newspaper I mentioned earlier. There's a good map and description in there, but I like learning from people, so I'm going to introduce you to Mason up here on our very top deck. This young man is an Inupiaq Alaskan from Fairbanks. He was a firefighter when he was up here, then decided, I'm going to try a little different climate for college, and is studying nursing at the University of North Florida. So we are really glad he's back home. Mason, good to have you on board today. Then on our third deck, the Texas deck, we'll meet Jacob, who is also a Inupiaq. There he is. He's a Fairbanksan going to BYU, Idaho, and studying nursing. Very important resource for us across the country. We're glad he's part of the crew. This is his first year with us. And then on our second deck, we'll say hello to Bella, who is a Inupiaq. At least a silhouette of her there. She is from Anchorage at a junior at Ansett Middle College, studying business and playing soccer. Good addition to our crew. Nice to see you, Bella. And part of what you'll learn about from your guides is how human beings were able to survive in this part of the world 10 or 12 or 14,000 years ago, maybe double that according to some new theories, with none of the modern conveniences we enjoy today, but all the same challenges of the climate. Summer days in the 80s and 90s above, our winter days at 40 or 50 below. Coldest recorded temperature in the region is -72. And here, if you're not from here, you probably notice the daylight's a little freaky right now. But on the winter solstice, it's dark 21 3/4 hours in the day. People were surviving in that for millennia. Little shelters made out of spruce tree parts and caribou hide, following the food wherever it went, never letting anything go to waste. Then about a century and a half ago, people from other parts of the world started wandering up here, and some of the natives decided to settle in more permanent villages, like this one you see to the right. This is the Chena village, where we're going to stop for about an hour on this beautiful day. After we turn around, you'll get to explore what we like to think of as a living museum, an area we get to preserve just like this. Sort of a snapshot of what Jim used to see. It doesn't represent a modern village, it's more like a time capsule. Plus, we're going to learn about fish camp. As you see the fish wheel in the water, and our expert on salmon, Avery, with the catch of the day. Hello over there.
Good morning, everyone. This guy is a chum salmon, and when you all turn around and come back upriver, I'm going to show you how we prepare this for our dogs, and I'll explain a little bit more about fish camp life.
Okay. Good introduction to the subsistence lifestyle, fishing in the summer, trapping in the winter, hunting in the fall. You know, you look at these woods over to our right here, and imagine all these leaves are yellow. A native family hunting for moose or caribou thousands of years ago, with bow-tipped spears moving quietly through the trees, hoping they'd come up on an area with big animals, kind of like those actually right over there. Yeah. Well, now isn't that a coincidence? Yeah, we knew they'd be there. Well, we'd like for you to see them in this setting, while emphasizing again how nothing goes to waste in Alaska Native culture. A time of good hunting means meat for food, hides for clothing and shelter, gut, bones, sinew, antlers, whatever you don't eat, you make something out of. Now, what you see in the pen over here is, of course, domesticated Rangifer durandus, same genus and species as indigenous wild caribou. These are reindeer, but in all the ways that matter, they're virtually indistinguishable from their wild cousins other than being a little smaller. They have all the same adaptations, like that coat that changes with the season. You can see how they look a little scruffy, some of them, because they're still shedding out the heavier winter coat. In the middle of summer, they have a nice, thin, dark brown coat, and then in the winter, they grow in the thick white one. So they always have natural camouflage. And every strand of hair is hollow. There's air trapped inside. So they're naturally buoyant, and also have plenty of winter insulation. Plus those great big feet. Wide split hooves so that they can keep their footing on snow or spongy tundra. And when their food is buried in the winter, they can shovel right down through several feet of snow and get to the moss and lichen underneath. That's where their name comes from, by the way. Caribou is a Mi'kmaq word originally. It means deer who paws the ground. Both male and female grow antlers, too. Only time of year where that happens normally. And both sexes will drop them later in the year because they're not permanent like horns. You see all these antlers are in velvet right now. They've got that furry layer of skin protecting the blood supply underneath. But when they get into the rut, they'll scrape all that velvet off against the trees. The antlers will look like bone or mahogany. Then after they reproduce, all the antlers will fall off. Males lose theirs first. Females a little later because they've evolved to defend the young. But then the females shed theirs and everybody grows new ones. So what you see out here is just this year's growth. Wild caribou are doing great in Alaska. There's anywhere from 750,000 to 1 million of them in the count usually. 32 distinct herds.
Yeah, because there's like where they were standing.
Domesticated reindeer are not indigenous. They were brought here from Siberia at the end of the 1800s. And because these are domesticated, they understand how to be loyalty. That was just a preview, though. You're going to see them again when we go on shore, because the guides get you right back to where they stay with us in the summer. Take your pictures from just a few feet away. Go home and make up any story you want.
So what river's that?
Discovery 3 is coming up on the end of the Chena River. This is where it concludes its 90-mile journey through interior Alaska, makes a right, and joins with the waters of one of the larger glacial-fed river systems on the planet. This is the Tanana, and it's not hard at all to tell which one is which, because the water is going to change pretty dramatically in appearance. The Chena is spring and runoff fed, so its water is darker and clearer. But you look where these rivers collide up off the bow or on your monitor, and I'm going to challenge you to not think of this moment in your life every time you put half and half in your coffee from now on. It still happens to me all these years later. That much lighter colored water is because of the silt road in the Tanana. There's crushed up rock in there that's actually so soft and fine, it goes right through the gills of migrating salmon and doesn't bother them. It's like baking flour. But Maddie, you know better than most that, interesting as it may look, it's a challenge to get through, because you never really know what you're going to see till you show up.
Yeah, you really don't, JR. The Tanana River is a really interesting animal. It's not the same as a traditional river that we're used to, like the Chena, and that's because it's not funneled through one dominant waterway. It's what we call a braided river system, and what that means is it's made up of several individual sloughs and waterways that weave along the valley floor, and when taken as a whole, make up the Tanana. In fact, what we see out here just in front of us only makes up about 25% of the Tanana in this specific area. The rest of it, including the main channel, lie almost a mile ahead of us at the base of those tall spruce trees. So it's an interesting and challenging one to navigate.
Yeah, well, the way that some channels fill in and others dig out, and everything's always moving around, how did your predecessors manage to navigate a river with this many options and not constantly get stuck?
Yeah, that's the big question, is how do you navigate a river like the Tanana? Our aids to navigation don't really help us all that much out here. So the way we navigate this river is kind of by the seat of our pants, and we call it reading the river. So we look at an area and we see the speed of water, but most importantly, the surface patterns. And oftentimes those surface patterns indicate where the deep spots are. So it's not a science, it's more of an art. So you have to spend a lot of time out here making mistakes, bumping off those sandbars. I've done that more times than I care to admit, and the same with all of my family members. But just like anything in life, it takes a lot of practice, and you get better with time.
Yeah, well, and then pass it on to younger generations, which your family has done remarkably well over the years. Thank you for the background. And she's going to focus on getting us safely turned around. This whole river system rises and falls seasonally. Not because of precipitation the way people normally think of it, like it rains or snows a whole bunch and the river rises, because we don't actually get that much precipitation in this part of the world. Only about 12 inches in the average year, rain and snow combined, is all that falls out of the sky. Ironically, what makes our rivers rise is all our beautiful days like this, because that's when the snow that fell in the Alaska range melts and runs out into the Tanana. So it rises, and the Chena bumps into it out here. As you saw, it creates kind of a damming effect at the confluence. So it slows the Chena way down and actually backs it up into town. There's a lot of mud and river grass that was fully exposed just days ago, and now it's increasingly underwater. When we start the season and actually when we end it. Sometimes there's not more than about 4 to 6 feet in the channel. And at the peak of the summer, it could be 13 to 15 feet. That's how much it changes. Fortunately, the Chena doesn't flood. At least not anymore. It did in 1967, which was a mess. About 95% of our streets were underwater. But then the Army Corps of Engineers built the Chena River Flood Control Project. So now, if the Chena gets too high, there's a great big gate that they can shut, which will divert the Chena still into the Tanana, but it's a different spot, about 25 miles upstream. So that high water can't get down this far and pose a threat. But we would have flooded again a bunch since 1967. I think about 30 times. I was looking it up recently. 30 additional flooding events if that hadn't been built, so we're very glad it's there. Migrating salmon when they get the urge to reproduce. Might see the first of the kings around Independence Day. So let's turn our attention back to the monitors and show you a fish wheel actually catching some salmon with no external motor or engine needed to make it work. It's powered entirely by river current. If you look at this next shot on the screen, you'll see it catch one. Some of the salmon end up in the basket. They get scooped up, as you can see there. They'll slide down into the trough at the bottom, pop out the chute into the catch box, and that's where they'll stay till the family comes to pick them out. Then again, there's not one little bit of any of these salmon that goes to waste. Every single piece will be used to feed either people or dogs. And we're going to learn more about that from Avery, who is now to our left, and she'll also be on your monitor. Hello again over there.
Hello again, everyone. Like Jared said, my name is Avery, and I'm a Quaycon at the Alaskan, born and raised here in Fairbanks. However, my family is from the small village of Galena, which is around 300 miles west along the Yukon River. And that's where they went to their fish camp every summer.
Yeah, well, we want to learn what's been passed on to you as far as processing a lot of salmon in a short period of time. But maybe if we could start with the camp itself. What are all these different things around you?
Yeah, so fish camp here is very much like we would see along the Tanana or the Yukon River during the summer months. Every summer, each family would pack up and head up to around 30 miles away from their village to their family's camp. My family's camp's around 18 miles upriver of Galena, and that's where they use the fish wheel to catch their salmon, which is very similar to the one we see here today. Now, the fish wheel is the centerpiece of fish camp. It is an incredibly efficient fish catching machine that allows us to catch enough salmon to feed our dogs and to support our families throughout the winter months. And if we look on shore, we can see our canvas wall tents. That's where every family would stay during the summertime. Closer to me is the outdoor air drying racks where we can hang our salmon until they're ready to go into the smokehouse, which is a larger, more permanent building you see behind me. The smokehouse is the key to turning our salmon into a fully preserved and fully dehydrated food source. Now, once the salmon was done smoking, it would then go into the cache, which is a little building built on stilts you see next to the smokehouse. The cache, we'd store it in there so that no animals could get into it. But speaking of animals, the little boxes that you see in between the canvas wall tents are dog houses. Families would bring their dogs to camp to act as a natural alarm, just in case any larger animals came towards camp.
Yeah, like bears, for example, which not only is a threat to your family, but weeks of work could be destroyed. And you don't want to be a risk like that. Speaking of the work, let's go back to the cutting table now. What was this you're working on?
Yeah, this guy here is a chum salmon, and here in the interior of Alaska, we get 3 different types of salmon. A single run each of the king and silver, and 2 runs here of the chum. Now, because this guy is a slightly lesser quality and gets run twice every year, this would be reserved for our dogs. So I started by removing the head and separating the two fillets at the backbone, leaving them connected at the tail so they could be hung on the air drying racks. And as you see, there's still a little bit of meat left on this backbone, and because nothing is ever wasted in our culture, I cut this off and this would be given to the dogs at camp. And if this were the head of a higher quality salmon, it could be used to make fish head soup, which is a delicacy usually only reserved for our elders.
Oh, yeah. How is it, fish head soup?
I don't know, JR, I'm not old enough.
Oh, she's not old enough. No, well, it's elders eat first. And I hear it's amazing, by the way, so she's not like, ugh. It's just, she's going to have to wait 50 years. Now, why the slicing into the fillet?
Right now I'm scoring the salmon, which is creating diagonal cuts through the flesh down to the skin. Scoring creates more surface area, which then allows the smoke to work deeper into the salmon to further dehydrate it.
And you see when she holds it up at the end here, I was like this for a picture. Every one of those cuts opens a vent down into the fillet, so it'll lose all of its water weight, but none of the nutritional value. See there? All ready for the next step. There's no fingers or thumbs on the table. Now, why not just take that into your smokehouse? You'd rather have it exposed out in the open?
Yeah, so we don't want a wet, drippy salmon going right into the smokehouse as it could mold. So what we're gonna do is hang them on the air drying racks until they stop dripping and form a nice sheen or glaze to them. And then whenever it is done drying, it could then go into the smokehouse. Now keep in mind that every family has their own preferences and techniques for preparing salmon, and because I just did the basic dog food cut, that's going to be rotated in the smokehouse for around 2 weeks until it is fully dehydrated, weighs less than a pound, and looks like the salmon you see in the smokehouse.
Yeah, that's very dry and leathery, lightweight, can be bundled up just like firewood actually and taken on dog sleds all winter. Big difference from those floppy fillets. But speaking as a human, I don't think that probably tastes a lot better than firewood when it's that dry. So how about the salmon that's made for your family?
Yeah, so we have several differences as we like to add more time and care to the process. We first start with a large king or silver salmon and then wash it really well. We like fillets too, but we can also cut them into long vertical pieces called our salmon strips. And then we'd soak the salmon in a brine. My family likes to use brown sugar, honey, and salt. Not only for the flavor, but the salt also really helps at keeping those bugs away. And then the salmon would be hung on the air drying racks until it was dry enough to go into the smokehouse. However, for a much shorter amount of time. Maybe only 2 or 3 days, as we like a softer texture for ourselves. And then finally, we like to use a different wood. My family likes to use cotton or alder wood for that sweeter flavor, but for the dogs, we use spruce, drift, anything we can find really. They're not too picky.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to pick from coming along our left side here right now, so I want to remember those good recipes of yours for later. And while we make our way up to the mooring area, could you give us an idea of what the village experience is all about?
Yeah, of course. So your guides and I are very excited to show you around the Chena village and introduce you to our culture. This is actually a replica of the original Chena village that Captain Jim had visited while running freight. But when that became inaccessible by boat, it then largely ceased to exist. So Captain Jim and his family decided to create the living museum we see here. Some cabins here are over 100 years old, and there are many artifacts that have been carefully relocated from the original site. And all replicated buildings were made by hand by native craftspeople using traditional techniques and tools. Kind of like the post office you see right in the middle. Now you can't actually ship anything from there, but at that statue of granite is where someone will be to sign your books in around half an hour.
Okay. And Tekla, by the way, will have plenty of books in that cabin, so you don't have to get one on the boat and take it out. You can do all of that at once. As far as the tour, though, Are we going to do that right with you, Avery, or we'll kind of be walking around on our own?
So a little bit of both, actually. We're all going to be split into groups and take you around to 3 stops here at the Chena Village. One of the stops being at the cabin with the moose antlers and that big old moose. Now don't worry if that's not your first stop, as everyone here will get a chance to see everything at the Chena Village. We're going to see those reindeer again, and your guides and I will introduce you to how the Alaskan skillfully survived this environment for thousands of years, and how the nomadic people then transitioned into permanent cabins and villages. The tour today is around 25 minutes, and afterwards you're going to get some free time to explore on your own and get any photos you may have missed. We just ask that you please respect any road boundaries, as those are there for your safety and the protection of our artifacts. Your guides and I are very excited to answer any questions you might have, and if you want to talk to me, I'm going to be back at Fish Camp after this tour. Now, welcome to the Chena Village in my native place on the Alaskan.
All right, thank you, Avery. Great introduction. Glad we get to share in your culture here today. Now, a few last-minute items as we get tight into shore here. First off, the forward stairs will be open. So any of you on the top 2 decks who want to follow me down, you can come up to the front, but if everybody does that, then it's going to take forever, obviously. So if you're in the back, have a look at those stairs in the back of the boat on both sides, by the way, shoreside and riverside. A lot of times people will think that they need to come over to the left, and that actually just slows it down for you as well. And we'll ask everybody that's on deck 2, please use the rear stairs only. Again, on both sides, so we don't end up in a traffic jam. There are restrooms on shore and drinking water out there. The ashtrays are coffee cans or little pails with sand in the bottom. So it's fine to have a smoke if you just promise that you stay right close to that, because this, again, because it's such a dry part of the world, it's very fire prone, and even flicking a little something flammable on a gravel path can smolder and create a problem. So appreciate your help with that. If you see a rope somewhere, as Avery said, it's there for a reason, so please don't go over or under any of those, even if they droop. And if you have kiddos, make sure they understand that. And then finally, when the whistle blows, don't panic, it doesn't mean we left. This is the warning that it's time to come on back. And you'll be able to hear it fine from anywhere in the village. Please do start heading for the boat though when you hear the whistle, so we can keep you on schedule and nobody misses whatever's next. Which is some place takes us to this point. So with all of that handled, we want to thank you so much for your very kind attention, and welcome to the Chena Village.
After you, please.
Where's the...
Right here. Yeah. I'm going to scoot in. All right.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
My name is Jacob. I'm a enthusiast, and
My native name is Alaskan. I was born and raised here in Fairbanks. My mom was raised here as well. My ancestry is from Wainwright and Point Hope, two small communities about 600 miles north of Fairbanks. My siblings and I grew up enjoying the bounties of Alaska and would hunt moose, fish salmon, pick blueberries in the summer, and hang out with our cousins. I'm a junior at Brigham Young University, Idaho, and I'm studying nursing.
Okay, and hello everyone. My name is Mason. This might sound a little repetitive because as Jacob mentioned, we are cousins. But I'm also in Upiak, and I'm also born and raised here in Fairbanks. But my family has a cabin that's about 150 miles west of here, which is only about 100 miles from the mountain, where we have a beautiful view of the mountain. We like to spend our time hunting, fishing, camping, and just enjoying nature. Now, as JR mentioned, I did get a little tired of the winters here, so I moved across the country to study nursing down at the University of North Florida. But we are all now in the Tanana Valley, which is the heart of Athabascan country and on the ancestral lands of the Dana people. Today, Jacob and I will be sharing with you how the Athabascans skillfully survived in this environment for over 10,000 years, and how they transitioned to village life and Western culture within the past century. Now, please be sure that you're staying with Jacob and I. As you may have noticed, we are rotating with another group, and we just want to be sure you all get the chance to see and hear everything. Then at the end of the tour, you'll have some free time to roam around on your own, ask questions, and take pictures of anything you may have missed. Now, around us here, you can see some of the largest game animals found here in Alaska. Starting over to your far right with the hide of a grizzly bear. In the middle is a moose, and then closest to me is a caribou. Then if you look over to your left, you can see an example of a full-size bull moose. He was taken just north of us in the White Mountains and has a trophy-size 73.5-inch rack. Now, the moose were the most important resource to the Athabascan people. And while caribou travel in herds, moose are solitary, tending to travel alone. So the Athabascans had to become very skilled at calling the moose. One way to do this was by taking a shoulder blade from a previous kill and scraping it against a tree like Jacob will show us. Wow, isn't he a skilled hunter? Now, this sound imitates the moose's antlers scraping against a tree, and because those bull moose are very territorial, this sound might alert another moose, alert the moose on his home turf to investigate the intruder and see who's on his turf. Another way to call the moose was verbally, using a birch bark megaphone like this. The hunter would imitate the moose's mating call, which is a very deep and a guttural grunting sound. Would you like a demonstration? Okay, Jacob? Once a moose was brought into the area using the real mating call, the hunter would then use a bone-tipped spear to provoke the animal to charge. They would then plant the spear in the ground at a steep angle, so when the moose came charging and reared up to stomp the hunter, it'd be forced to impale itself on the tip of that spear. Then all our brave hunter had to do was simply but very quickly roll out from underneath that heavy falling animal. And then once the meat was processed, they would begin to prepare the hide to be used for shelter, clothing, and lashings. They would start by scraping off all the hair and flesh using sharpened shin bones from the moose and the caribou. This would leave us with a large piece of rawhide like this, which could be cut into strips called babiche. Babiche was used as lashings to web snowshoes or just as an all-purpose rope. Now, obviously, rawhide is far too stiff to be made into clothing just yet. So to continue the tanning process, they would soak this in a solution of water and fermented moose brains. Now, this milky fluid has acidic enzymes that helps break down all the tough fibers in that coat. They would then begin scraping the hide using a tool like this calabash, which is very similar to the northern ulup, except it has a serrated edge for scraping rather than cutting. And then finally, after weeks and weeks of soaking, scraping, and wringing out that hide, it would finally be reduced to a soft piece of material like this.
To preserve all that hard work, they would stretch the hide over a campfire and smoke it. You can always tell a true native tanned hide by its rich, smoky smell. Now I'd like to share some pieces of traditional regalia with you all. This is a ceremonial maiden's dress. And this is a ceremonial chief's coat. They are both museum quality garments made from tanned moose hides that were prepared using those same traditional methods that Mason just explained. After contact with the Russians, the Athabascans would trade furs for glass seed beads and became very well known for their beautiful and intricate beadwork designs. The flowers here all have symbolic meaning. On the maiden's dress, you'd see flowers commonly found in her village, such as the bluebell and our state flower, the forgive-me-not. On the chief's coat, the flowers symbolize animal tracks in hopes of bringing the Athabascan man good luck on the track line. Both of these garments are trimmed with beaver fur. The buttons on the chief's coat are made of cross-sections of moose antler. While the buttons on the maiden's dress are cross-sections of caribou antler. The garment that Mason and I were wearing is called an atigluk. It's an everyday working garment that is always handmade and often from a family pattern. Now I think you're really going to like this next piece. Avery is wearing an Athabascan Yukon-style women's winter parka. It is all traditional, except for that big zipper down the middle. That's there so she could get it on and off quickly during these warm summer days. Traditionally, it'd be sewn together as a pullover-style parka. The body of the parka is made of beaver, which has been sheared for design. It is trimmed with calfskin, river otter, and timber wolf. Now Avery's going to show us the sunshine ruff. The outer part of the ruff is made of timber wolf, while the inner part is made of wolverine. Wolverine is always sewn closest to the face because the natural oil in the fur helps prevent frostbite. The leftover pieces would be sewn to tassels like these, which are wolverine tipped with timber wolf. Avery would sew those onto her parka to show that her family were great trappers. They caught the tricky wolverine. Now Avery's going to show us the designs of the back of the parka. Beadwork and skin sewing techniques were passed down one generation after the other, and each family had their own distinct pattern. For example, the artist that made this parka is from Fort Yukon and features her family's traditional wild rose pattern. You can always, whenever an Athabascan woman would travel to another village, you can always tell where she was from based on the designs on the back of her parka. Thanks, Avery. Now, if you didn't get the picture you wanted, don't worry. Someone will be back here to model that parka after our tour today. Now, for some interesting facts about the parka, it weighs about 23 pounds and is made for 40 below weather, so it gets very hot wearing it in summer days. It took about 8 months to make, and it's been appraised for $35,000. And they only take cash. But seriously, it's priceless to us. So if you come back and take pictures, if you just ask us, you please don't touch it. And now at our next stop, Mason and I will be sharing with you folks how these cabins were built, why there's grass on our roofs, and I'll show you some furs from animals found here in Alaska. So you folks will follow Mason down this trail there, we'll get you to your next stop.
So you're going to learn some things?
Waiting for someone.
I can come back to
And no desire.
Reason 3, let them be.
Yeah, find a band. Sit back credit for the work. Give you the ability to be
We're going to do this right here so we can see.
Alright, welcome to our second stop. This is a typical setting of an Athabascan village after the first significant contact with Western culture, which happened in the early 1800s. Then, in the early 1900s, prospectors arrived into the interior of Alaska by Sternwheeler steamboat, which is kind of like we've all done back on Discovery 3. Now, the Alaska native nomadic lifestyle experienced a major shift after this contact. Missionaries, trappers, and traders all introduced new metal tools, food, clothing, cultural practices. New schools and the development of trading posts contributed to the creation of permanent villages. And just like those cabins built in those villages, this cabin here was created completely from trees harvested at this site. Large spruce trees, like those growing all around us, were cut down, peeled, and then used for the walls. And then the gaps in between each log was chinked with moss. For the roof, younger spruce poles, peeled, and laid flat across the top, and then covered in a layer of bark. Then to seal and insulate the roof, earth was placed on top of that bark, and then grass was planted in that soil just to prevent it from eroding. Now that you all know a little bit more about a cabin like this and how it's made, how many of you think you could survive an Alaskan winter cabin like this? Yeah, okay. Well, you three folks can stay with Jacob and I here. And then when the rest of you come back to visit in January, you can stay in the spacious guest cabin all the way to the left. No, I'm just kidding. That's really called a trapper's line cabin. Cabins like those were built along a winter's trap line about a day's journey apart. And this would allow for that trapper and his dog team to safely extend that trap line very far from its village. And I know, it may not look like much, but trust me, after a long day of trapping in that freezing 40 below weather, that cabin is a very warm and welcoming place. But then once he returns back to his village, he would need a place to store all of those newfound valuable furs.
Which leads me to the structure I am sitting on called a cache. Now cache is the French word for storage or hiding place, which is exactly what it is. It's a storage shed built on stilts to keep it up off the ground, out of the winter snow, and away from those pesky animals. Up here in front of the cache, you see some examples of common fur-bearing animals found here in Alaska. This one here is a large-sized timberwolf pelt. It stretches about 7 feet from nose to tail. Timberwolf is very important to the Athabascans for clothing. Cross sections from the back of the pelt were used for the outer part of a parka ruff, like one we just saw, or the whole pelt could be used to make a complete parka, which was most often worn by men. This next one here is the lynx. Lynx are closely related to the bobcat and are easily identified by their black pointed ears, their short stubby tail, and their big fluffy paws, which they use to bound across the winter snow. Now this next one is the wolverine. Wolverine are very valued by the Athabascans for a couple of reasons. As mentioned before, the natural oil in the fur helped prevent breath from freezing on it, which made it ideal for the inner part of a parka ruff. Additionally, as many of you folks know, the wolverine is a very cunning and ferocious animal, so only the best and luckiest Athabascan travelers came home with this prize. In fact, I am told that if a bear and a wolverine were to meet on a trail, it'd be the bear that'd be the first to graciously step aside. These next 4 pelts are all foxes. This is the red fox. This is the silver fox. And this is the cross fox. All of these foxes are very abundant here in the interior, and all 3 could be found in the same litter. Now this beautiful white one at the end is the Arctic fox. They are found in the northernmost part of Alaska, up above the Arctic Circle. This guy is in his winter coat. In the summertime, these foxes turn a brown color. Now these little guys are the ermine. They are also in the winter coat, which is white with a little brown tip at the tail. In the summertime, they turn a nice chocolatey brown color. You can just call them weasels. But up here in Alaska, we have another nickname for them. But first, I must ask, are any folks here visiting from Texas? Got a few? Perfect. Oh, got a lot. That's a good deal. Well, welcome to the big state of Alaska. We're going to call these guys our Texas-sized polar bears. Just kidding. Now, these little guys are the muskrat. Now, they look very small, but they're actually very warm, and so are often used for the body of a parka. It takes about 40 to 60 of these little guys to make an adult-sized parka. Now, this next one here is a marten. It takes about 3 martens to make a nice, warm fur hat. Got one on each side, and then one over the top. Tails were left on just for decoration. Now, I'm sure many of you folks will recognize this one. Do we have any guesses? Mink. Yep, this is the mink. Can you folks hear me okay with the plane? I'll wait for the mask. Sound good? Folks hear me okay now? Perfect. Now mink, they're not very warm, so they're often just torn into strips and used to trim clothing, or given to children to practice their skin sewing techniques. However, after Western contact, they became much more valuable to us and became known as our money pelts. Now this last one here is the beaver. Beaver were very valued by the Athabascans for their meat as well as their fur. With long guard hairs and a thick underfur, beaver were not only very warm, they were water resistant. They were used to trim the cuffs of our parkas, mittens, and our winter boots we call mucklucks. Now that we've shared a little bit with you folks about what early village life was like, at our next stop we're going to travel way back in time and show you how the Athabascans survived prior to Western contact and get a closer look at those reindeer. if you folks will follow facing down that trail there, it'll get to your last stop.
I thought they were going to say that. And one of the years, like, is that one of the scared animals. Oh, good.
Rick wants to kill
It wasn't that bad right now.
Cool.
I'll just hold on to the antler.
Yeah, let's go right here, I think. Yep.
And there's Nathan. Here's not much on
All right, welcome to the last stop of the guided tour. Now, this area you see here is what an Athabascan campsite may have looked like before that first significant contact with Western culture. Anthropologists tell us that the Athabascans had to survive in some of the most difficult conditions known to man, and they have done so for over 10,000 years. Involvement with the Westerners is comparatively recent because that first contact was in the early 1800s with the Russians. Prior to that, the Athabascans lived entirely off the land. This meant that every day was a battle for survival. Therefore, the Athabascans had to become very efficient hunters and gatherers. They would often follow herds of game to provide for their family. Moose and caribou were two of the primary animals that they hunted. Now, the reindeer you see here are the domesticated relative of the caribou. The biggest difference between reindeer and caribou can't fly. No, I'm just kidding. Caribou are wild animals that travel in herds and often along the same migratory paths from one year to the next. Once the Athabascans have spotted these herds, they would begin placing snares and fences to funnel that herd down and to lead them to an area where an individual could be more easily harvested. Another advantage the Athabascans were able to have over these large game animals was by using snowshoes. Snowshoes allow a group of hunters to outmaneuver a solitary moose or caribou in deep snow conditions. Now, these snowshoes here are made of two pieces of bent birch webbed together with that rawhide babiche, and a strip of moose hide for the binding. Now, these large game animals provided those early Athabascans with nearly everything that they needed to survive. The meat, the bones, and even the liquids were used. Nothing ever went to waste in their culture. The winter hide of the caribou was especially valuable to the Athabascans. As JR mentioned on the boat, each hair in this hide is hollow, which makes it lightweight and exceptionally warm. And that's why you may have noticed that in some of the beds we have here or around the rest of the village, the beds are made of lying down fresh spruce boughs and then topping that with a caribou hide. This would make for a lightweight, a warm, but most importantly, a portable mattress. Because those early Athabascans were a nomadic group of people, and they would pack up everything they owned and travel up to 8 to 9 times per year. And that's why these three structures you see here are far more temporary than that giant log cabin that we just learned about at our last stop. This dome-like structure here is a portable shelter called a skin hut. It is made of young spruce poles that were steamed, bent, and fastened together, and then caribou hide is stretched around it for warmth and protection. That hole that you see at the top was often left there just so smoke can escape when they built a fire on the inside. And then when the Athabascans were ready to go to their next campsite, they would always pack up each one of those hides and take it with them because they're far too valuable to be left behind. So here you have the world's first mobile home. Then further to the right is a more temporary structure called a double lean-to. Double lean-tos were commonly used by hunters for their quick and easy setup. Spruce boughs are just laying over that spruce pole frame to help shed any falling rain or snow.
Now we've talked a lot about the spruce tree, but the birch tree also supplied many important resources to the Athabascan people. And although we don't have an example of one growing nearby, I made Mason wake up really early this morning to chop this one down for you here. Now birch trees are very tall, with white papery bark, green leaves, and in addition to the wood, there are two features of it that were especially valuable. The first was a fungus called punk, P-U-N-K. This fungus grew on the trunks of birch trees, and it's one of the main reasons why the Athabascans were able to survive such long, harsh winters. They would get a sharp rock and then bore a hole in the punk. Then they would place a burning ember from the fire inside, where it could smolder for up to a day or more. And then, when they're ready to leave camp, they would wrap that smoldering punk in moss and place it in a caribou hide carrying pouch. Then, when they came to the next campsite, they would take it out of the pouch and use that ember to quickly establish a new fire. Well, this isn't my favorite part about the punk. My favorite part is that when you burn it in the summertime, it emits a black smoke that acts as a natural mosquito repellent. Another important feature of the resin you see along the seams of the boat is made of a mixture of spruce pitch, animal fat, and caribou or moose hair. Now, a canoe like this can hold up to 6 hunters for about 2 seconds. In reality, you can hold up to 2 hunters and all their gear. Now, made in a similar manner to the canoe is this birch bark basket. The Athabascans would use these baskets to gather, store, and even cook their food. Now, birch bark is pretty flammable, so what they would do is fill it partially full of water and throw in chunks of meat, roots, or berries, then rotate hot rocks from the fire in and out to bring the water to a slow boil. This was a process that could take hours. It's a day's work. And then, when baby did what babies are known to do best, Mom would take baby out of the basket, dump those soiled contents, and then start all over again. So there you have the world's first biodegradable, earth-friendly, and reusable baby diaper. Now, it has been Mason and I's pleasure sharing with you folks our cultures today. We are both very proud of our Alaska Native heritage, and we hope we left you all with the understanding that the Athabascans were a very talented and resourceful group of people who not only persevered through harsh conditions, but dealt with an increasing Western presence in our ancestral lands. As the next generation of Alaska Natives,
We are carrying on our family's culture, tradition, and language. And you've only scratched there, kind of on your right, is our newest display of 2 bullfighting moose who've got their antlers locked together. Then if you take any trail towards the back of the village, we get to our dog yard, where you get to see those dogs and handler folks, and that native language, Kuinakpak. Thank you very much.
Where do you want to go? That way? We'll come back over here. Huh?
so I'm just going to do my best to yell. I'm sorry if you can't hear me. But we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Kira. I just recently turned 18 years old and I've been running dogs since I was 9. I've done all sorts of races over the years. The first race I ever did was when I was 14 years old, which is when you're finally old enough to start racing. It was a whopping 25 miles, but I did get first place in it. Thank you, but that was because I was the only one in it. I then went on to do that race 3 more times over the years. The other races I've done include the Sea Dog 110, which is a 110-mile race that Susan Butcher's son, or Tekla, puts on in honor of Susan. So it was really cool to get to do that race in its first ever running. I've run the Two Rivers 100, which I was the only kid in, and I got 2nd place. I've run the Yukon Quest Alaska twice now. The first year I ran it, I was 16 years old, and Julie was my lead dog, and we got 4th place. Then this past year, when I was 17, I ran it again. Havoc was my lead dog, and we got 1st place. He did very good. He was my lead dog, and all the other dogs on my team were rescue dogs from the animal shelter. Then the other races that I've done are the Junior Iditarod, which is the Iditarod for kids 14 through 17 years old. Unfortunately, you do have to be 18 or older to do 1,000 miles here in Alaska. The Junior Iditarod is what you do before you age up to the full Iditarod. So I've done the Junior Iditarod 4 times now. It's 160 miles, so it's a lot shorter than the full Iditarod. You have to be 18 or older to do any races 200 miles or more. So I'm really excited about this next winter when I can finally move up to some long races. But I've run the Junior Iditarod 4 times. The first year I ran it was in 2023. I was 14 years old, and I did it with a group of dogs from the Fairbanks Animal Shelter, and we got 11th place. Then I ran it again the next year with dogs from Trailbreaker Kennel, including Julie over there. She was one of my lead dogs, and we got 8th place. Then I ran it again the next year, and Julie was on my team, and we got 8th place. Then I ran it again the next year. Havoc was one of my lead dogs, and we got 8th place. So that must be my lucky number or something. But both in 2025 and 2026 for the Junior Iditarod, I was awarded the Humanitarian Award, which is the award presented by the head vet to the musher who shows the best veterinary care to their dogs. So I was really excited to receive that award twice in a row from that race. Alright, but nobody came here to look at me, so let me introduce you to the real stars of the show. Obviously, he knows it. So we'll start with Teak here. Teak is 8 years old now, and he's one of our retired dogs. So his job is more of helping to train the younger dogs in the kennel. So what we can do is put Teak at the front of the team, followed by all of those younger dogs, and he's going to help them associate those left and right hands and teach them how to be a great sled dog. Next over here we have Julie, who is 8 years old, and she's an 8th generation descendant from Granite. She's done all sorts of races for me, and she is a really great dog. Lastly, over here we have Havoc, who is living up to his name. Havoc is actually my personal dog. I adopted him from the kennel this time last year because we thought he wanted to be retired and he wanted to be done running. But then I brought him inside and he ate my parents' couch. So we kind of figured that maybe he wasn't done running. We put him back on the team. I spent all year training him how to be a lead dog, and he led and won the Yukon Quest for me and led the entire Junior Iditarod for me. And he is also an 8th generation descendant from Granite. So he is a very good boy and he knows it. So before we keep going, I do have a couple of rules when it comes to these guys. First off, does anybody here have any pets at home? A lot of you guys, awesome. So these guys, as you saw, they can smell it on your shoes and they can smell it on your bags. So just be careful because they might run up and see if that does not smell like them or their pack, and they just might lift their leg and try to claim it as their own. So please be on the lookout for that. We already saw it from Teak. Next, please don't dangle anything over the fence to try to get their attention. Your hand is totally fine if you want to reach it and pet them, but your camera or your phone, don't dangle that over the fence because they're going to see that. They'll jump up and take it, and I cannot promise I can get that back for you in one piece. Which brings me to my last rule. Please do not dangle your children over the fence. These guys love kids. They don't get to see them very often, so they get really excited when they do. They'll jump up to say hi. We don't want anybody to get scratched because that's not a very good memory of Alaska or of this breed. So speaking of the breed, these guys are all Alaskan Huskies, and Alaskan Huskies are very different from Siberians and Malamutes. Siberians and Malamutes are those really big, fluffy, black and white dogs with the pointy ears and blue eyes and big, bushy tail. The one that most people think of when you think of a husky. Now, the reason we're not running those guys is because they're more built for pulling freight. So they can pull a lot of weight for a short amount of time and really slow. Whereas these guys are able to pull maybe a little bit less weight, but for a long amount of time and really fast. A good way to think about it is like Siberians and Malamutes are like football players. You know, they're really big and strong and they can run fast for a short amount of time, but then they get really tired. Whereas these guys are more like marathon runners. They're a little bit more lean, they might not be as strong, but they can run fast for a long amount of time and without getting too tired. So these guys are able to run just about 100 miles in the day, sometimes even more, without getting tired, and they still want to run. You guys saw today how excited they were to run. They definitely love doing that, so we want to make sure that they're getting to do that. Another cool thing about the Alaskan Huskies is that they all look very different from one another. These two are related right here. They have some similarities, but they also have a lot of differences, both in how they look and their personalities, which is one of my favorite things about Alaskan Huskies. All of the dogs are so different once they develop those personalities, and they all look different from one another. And that doesn't matter to us. One dog having brown eyes versus one dog having blue eyes doesn't tell me which dog is going to be a better sled dog. It just tells me one has brown eyes and one has blue eyes, and that doesn't matter to us. What really matters, however, is the dog's health. That means we're going to be breeding our best and healthiest male with our best and healthiest female to ensure that our puppies are going to be really amazing, really healthy dogs, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up to questions now. So does anybody have any questions about the dogs or about racing or anything like that? Any questions? Yeah. Male dogs versus female dogs? Yeah, do we have a preference when it comes to male versus female dogs? I'm really positive about this topic. What I do have to say is we run both males and females, but typically we see that the females are smarter, and they are more likely to be the lead dogs, which makes his sister a better lead dog than him, which is okay, buddy. So it is true. A lot of people think I'm joking when I say that, but the females are more likely to be the lead dogs because they're smarter. They're also not as strong as the males, which you're going to see in any animal, really. So you can see the males are a lot bigger on average than the females. So they're more likely to be what's called the wheel dog, which is the dog at the very back of the team. And they again are siblings. So Truly is about 45 pounds, which is a little above average for a female, and Havoc is about 60 pounds, which is a little above average for a male.
There you go, and you can pay for it right inside the bathroom. So there. Can I make this happen?
Is she in there or is it just a chicken?
Not here. I'm not from here. Well, I was born here, but I haven't lived here. I'm from Arizona.
Arizona. Greenwood High School.
Very small town.
Route 66? You're not old enough to know about Route 66.
Nope. Nope. I've been on it. I mean,
Didn't Lightning McQueen drive on Route 66?
yeah, he did.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only reason I know. Hey, we know that guy! Hey, we know that guy! Holy moly. We know that guy. He works here. Yo. Oh my god! Yo, hello? Connor, we love you! Yo, you're really cool. Really cool, bro. Can I get a nice firm handshake? Can I get a nice firm handshake? Oh my god.
They're in one of them. Is it one of them in the middle?
Go back to the boat.
Water, iced tea, juice, soda, lemonade, and other offerings. Good things to eat too, in parts 1 and 3. And if you decide to visit the trading post in the back of deck 2 there, be sure to let that crew know where you're from, because they keep track of that every day. I'm going to different states and countries that are represented. They actually have some maps with a box of push pins. So you can grab one of those and spike it into your homeland, make sure it gets noticed. Another place to look and see, too, if anybody else from your area is checked in today. That's at the back of deck 2 by the Valley. Looks like the last of the folks. And a chance, if you like, to say farewell to one of your new friends in dog mushing, Kira, over there. Glad you could join us today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and for affirming my story about the t-shirts. I like the validation that comes from seeing you guys in those. This young lady is a 4-time veteran of the Junior Iditarod, and not long ago she was given the Veterinarian's Choice Award by the doctors who take care of dogs because she takes the best care of hers. They recognize that. So that's pretty special. You go a long way when you make sure you got healthy dogs. We're looking forward to great things. Maybe we'll get rid of that Junior in front of Iditarod. So thank you so much. Thanks to our shore crew for taking good care of the village, which we appreciate. So it's always a nice place to stop by. Hope there was enough cottonwood out for you today. I love it when we're coming into fish camp and I'm about to announce the guy in the big water that goes right up my nose. Hey, welcome to the... How about your guides and deckhands on board? That's not a bad young crew, huh? Thought you'd enjoy meeting them. They're not done taking care of you yet either. While you were on shore, snack time. Anybody who would like to try wild Alaskan sockeye salmon, caught out in the ocean, by the way, not the rivers when they're all skinny and burned out. When they're at their very best in the sea. And I have some of that to share with you here pretty soon. Back to the same fresh water they were born in, the exact same river and stream. body mass they build up is burned off as energy. So they shrink way down and they change color and their faces get all thin and grumpy looking. And it just don't taste as good as what comes right out of the sea. We'll show you the difference actually on your screen between sockeye, like you always see on the postcards, with red bodies and green heads. Photogenic like that, but they don't taste anywhere as good as these do. Right out of the ocean when they're still a bright silvery blue. And we take our share into the plant, go through them by hand, save grade A for you, let the lower grades go down to the process where they don't have to be as careful. Because ours are all filleted and boned by hand. Jim and Mary never wanted machines ripping this all up. And then grind and ground sugar and salt, kind of like we learned from Avery back at Fishtail. Before they're smoked, but they're real ultimately. It's all sweet that everybody likes around the area. And then they don't even let machines put it in the can. That part is done by hand too. So what you see right there, hand-packed, all their smoked filet, is what we're going to share with you, except we just mix it up with cream cheese so it doesn't flop off your crackers as soon as we get it. The carpet fuzz makes a lousy garnish. I'm not going to say how I know that either. I'll give you the recipe for the dip though, so you can make this real easy when you get back home and start having jealous neighbor parties. That's what we'll invite all your friends and family over for 18 solid hours of your Alaskan adventure videos. Why not? People will sit through that and just eat it. So all we do is mix 2 cans of salmon and 8 ounces of green cheese. We call them bowl and stir. And don't bring these cans out either. That's important because there's nothing in there with that fillet except salmon oil. And if you pour that away, then you're losing flavor, texture, and most importantly, the health benefits that come from eating wild seafood. A lot of that's in oil. And you don't want to take my word for it. Consider that the crew that's been serving you today has salmon 2 times a day, every day, through the entire summer. And that's why, listen. Why everybody's so friendly. That is why we do it all the time. It's how we 89 is what our actual brain. Everything just snaps right back. So we're going to share with you on all 4 decks, right behind the wheelhouse up top, up forward at the galley on deck 3, move towards the back on the 2nd deck of the smokehouse, and then the main deck galley. And while you enjoy your salmon, we're going to give you a break. So any questions, you just stick a hand up and talk to one-on-one. We'll know more about salmon, specifically ask the crew serving it to you, because they're your experts on what's in there and how you get it home. So enjoy your salmon party, and I will check on you when we get a little farther upstream. with the recipes, and I'll let you read that. Save you a little, and if you want more recipes to try, the latest edition of the family's book is up around 18 or 19 different ideas, I think, for how to enjoy this specific type of salmon, because nobody else puts it up like this. That book's only $4.99 by itself, but if you get 2 or more of the gift boxes, we're just going to give you a recipe book. And then you'll have a bunch of things to try. Salmon chowder, salmon pasta, tacos, nachos, salads. So continue to enjoy for as long as it's out there. And if you have any questions, just let the serving crew know. Bay. Imagine that deck is going to be filled with revelers this afternoon, enjoying history and the food and beverage. Those lampposts are old mining novels turned up on end. You didn't notice that before. We've been recycling up here for a long time. Sections of the original water pipe got turned into benches along the path. Old mining gear in the yard. They really know their history. Oh, and speaking of history, you know, this is a family matter, and my Bingley adoption papers haven't cleared yet, so Captain Bingley, maybe if you don't mind?
Well, back in 1944, there was a young lady named Mary who came to study anthropology at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. She met a handsome young riverboat captain named Jim Binkley. They got married in 1947, and then they started this business in 1950. And as you might have already guessed, that very lady has come out to say hello to our left or on your monitors, my grandmother, Mary Binkley. Hi, Grandma. And this past April, she celebrated her 100th birthday. Happy birthday, Grandma. Hi, Rachel. When my grandpa used to introduce her, he'd say, I want you to meet my wife, my partner, and my best friend. And while you may have been the captain, there's no doubt that she's the admiral.
In fact, she's probably stuck in the tank right now. I'm sure we don't have to call in the dry dock. She was a tireless volunteer for decades here in the United Way Scouting Program, Salvation Army. She's still a member emeritus of the Salvation Army Board. She doesn't have to go anymore, but her name's right there at the top of every agenda. She and Jim got together after Jim completed his service in World War II. You don't want to see the colors on the back of their original Discovery #1. Think about Jim's service, my dad serving at Fort Wainwright. I always like to take a moment to thank any of you on board this boat who have served as well. Veterans and active personnel. We're sure glad you're on board here today. You're my friends. We're doing the difference. Check what your Watson was out that day. Said, yeah, I'll need your movie, sure. So there you go. And guess where the Iditarod starts when they don't have enough snow in Anchorage? They bring it all up here. And we watch from the fourth deck of the boat. Although most of us were out there on the ice in our lawn chairs, cheering them on, so we could be sure they knew how many good vibes we were passing along before they went out in the middle of nowhere. That was a really fun day. And there are no worries being on that ice at this time of year. You can drive across the river in a bunch of places where the ice roads are out. That's great. You live in this neighborhood or live in the run. You want to go over to the pump house for a Sunday run, you can get there in a few minutes. A lot easier to go around the long way and burning $5.50 gasoline or whatever it is. And you can use the ice roads until right about April when the first guy goes through. And then we don't do that anymore. Time to stop at that point. And the snow is just as dry as the rest of the climate. Remember, 12 inches of precipitation. That doesn't mean we will get several feet of snow over the course of a long winter. But when it melts, it's just 2 to 3 inches of water. That's it. Maybe a third of our overall when it falls out of the sky. I could have told you that with dry snow without looking at another book, too, because I grew up with 2 younger brothers who I wanted to get with snowballs. Because I saw that Christmas movie with Ralphie and the BB guy, you know, and it was like fun. But you pick up a big handful of this nonsense and try and squeeze it into a ball. Looks like it's don't explain that anymore. It's dumb. Yeah, no snowmen out of it, so we just went back inside. And that's where we learned. When it's 40 below outdoors and 0% humidity in the house, world-class static electricity. Oh yeah, and I grew up in the 70s when the carpet was shaggy. I know some of you remember that. So you scoot around on that bright orange monstrosity, you get 16,000 volts in your shoes, and somebody's getting tasered in the face. It's more fun than snowball anyway. I get kind of tingly just thinking about it. So here's Steamboat Landing over to our right. Some of you were asking me about the red lunch tickets. If you got one of those, that means that your dining hall lunch is included in your passage, but if you're on the version of this where you buy your own lunch, you can still eat in the dining hall if you want. You just check in at the register. You can see the dining hall is labeled. The way you get to it is up at the top of the boardwalk and then to the right into that Tananaw Saloon building. As an optional purchase, there are picnic-style lunches in the captain's corner that's in the back of that big white room there. You can bring those out on the dock if you like, with sodas and ice cream too. The restrooms will be open, of course. It's the 40 below experience if you want to just right to the opposite time of year. And of course our Susan Butcher dog sled display, which is very special to us because that's one of Susan's sleds. It's an Iditarod finishing sled. There's a big full-color picture of Susan in granite in there. So enjoy your time with us, however much it is, and on behalf of the Binkley family, I'd like to wish each and every one of you smooth air, calm waters, a clear trail, and Godspeed. Thanks for coming out this morning. Hope you had a nice day. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great to have you on board. Now we will be able to use the front stairs if you would like to come up forward. Just don't move any chains or doors by yourself. The crew will take care of that as soon as we're sure it's safe. And if you have any leftover questions, the crew will be on the dock. I'll be there with them, so ask away. That's why we're there. Always happy to chat with you. Thanks again for spending some time with us.